Welcome to this presentation, and here I'm going to be talking about leveraging blue ocean strategy to accelerate market leadership for your startup. So, a little bit about myself. Zion Thompson, co-founder at Startup Launch Code, and we help early stage companies scale route to market, identify who their customers are, and most importantly, drive revenue growth. So, here's what we'll be covering in this presentation. First is how to understand market dynamics and trends and harness them to your advantage. In addition, how successful startups use the blue ocean strategy to scale and how to adopt a blue ocean strategy into your startup and so much more. Right. So, first question is what is blue ocean strategy? Simply put, a blue ocean strategy is the pursuit of differentiation and low cost to open up new market space and create new demand, right? And look at it this way, right? So we have the red ocean and blue ocean. As it says, red ocean is a marketplace that is highly competitive. So many players in the space, all competing for the same market, same customers, and it's more like a dog eat dog, you know, space. And unlike compared to blue ocean where you literally create a new market, new opportunity for your business to scale, and there's so much ability for you to even scale, what you're doing, and more margins and more profits. So to kind of like give a top level differentiation between red ocean and blue ocean, so in red ocean, basically you are competing in an existing marketplace, right? While in blue ocean, it's more of new market creation, right? And first in red ocean, the whole idea is to beat the competition, whereas in blue ocean, it is making competition irrelevant, right? Then we also have in red ocean is to capture more of existing demand, while blue ocean is to create new demand, right? Red ocean, you make the value cost trade off, and while blue ocean, you just disprove the value cost trade off. So why is the blue ocean strategy important, right? And now, for any market to exist, there has to be demand and supply, correct? And when you look in any marketplace, the moment there is a growing demand or strong demand for a particular product, other people begin to dive into that space. So in the case where you look in at most businesses, if a company is making a killing in, let's say, the electronic space, and they are driving very good revenue and customer growth, there's definitely going to be another company that's going to consider entering that space. So demand and supply is where it all comes down to, right? And in red ocean, as a new entrant is coming into that space, they're actually crashing their price just to get the attention of the market. And so understanding blue ocean strategy helps you know how to position yourself so you don't just get thrown out of the way. And I'll explain it this way. So Michael Porter gave a what I'll call a thesis around the forces in a marketplace. So we have the threat of new entrants. So you're dominating the space, and there's a possible threat of someone else actually coming into that space and trying to topple you over. And there's also the bargaining power of suppliers. So there's the buyers, there's the suppliers. Could be manufacturers, could be any other thing. And the suppliers too have the power to say, you know what, we want to increase the price of producing XYZ goods, right? and that in turn could infect affect the demand in that marketplace, right? And there's a threat of substitutes. So what are the other products in, it could be in the same market or another market that could also affect buying behavior and cause consumers to just boycott whatever it is you're selling. And there's also the buyers too. Keep in mind that the buyers also have a very strong bargaining power in the context that a buyers could literally come together and say, you know what, we don't want to buy your goods at that price, right? And it could be a challenge for you. So Michael Porter said you need to consider these four factors in any industry you're in, right? Any market you're in, you need to really look at it critically in defining how to come up with like a blue ocean strategy. And in actually looking at that, we can look at like threat of new entry. What is the time and the cost of um, any new competition, coming into that space, right? How powerful are the suppliers in that space, right? There are a number of factors you can actually look at, and the threat of substitution. What is the performance of the substitutes product or service in that space? What is the cost of change, right? Is it going to cost the user, so much that they just say like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to stay here, right? So these are a number of things that are very critical to what your product or service that you're building, and how to look at what kind of strategy you're going to, you know, bring to give yourself to stay relevant. As mentioned earlier, the whole idea is to shift your thinking first from the red ocean approach to blue ocean. And in red ocean, you're really thinking about, oh, I need to crash my price to enter into a marketplace. Whereas in blue ocean, you can define your price and it's still okay as long as the customers or your buyers see value in what you're offering. Just coming in behind, showing like the difference between red ocean strategy and blue ocean strategy. So in red ocean strategy, we are competing in an existing market space, right? While blue ocean strategy, you are creating an uncontested market space. In red ocean strategy, you're trying to beat the competition, saying, okay, I'm going to reduce my price, I'm going to do XYZ. You're doing so many ninja stuff. Whereas in blue ocean strategy, the competition is just irrelevant, right? And red ocean strategy, you're exploiting existing demand. Oh, I heard that in the insurance business, there's a lot of demand. People are now understanding the need for insurance, and so you are now, trying to make a pivot into that space, in that existing market. Whereas the blue ocean strategy is, how can I bring insurance in such a different way that nobody else is doing, and that just creates and captures new demand, right? Red ocean, you make the value cost trade off. Blue ocean, you really don't have to. Now we're going to talk more about that as we go on. And in red ocean, you are aligning the whole system of your business with differentiation or low cost. What makes you different, or how much cheaper can you go? Whereas in blue ocean, you're actually doing both, right? Your business is aligned into, pursuing of differentiation and also driving down cost. So, having said that, right? Um, what we actually need to look at in just to further buttress the difference between red ocean and blue ocean is actually in the value innovation model. As you can see, um, in the red ocean, it is more about how can we reduce costs. Whereas in blue ocean, the whole idea is how can we increase the value, right? So the focus is in value. What does the customer see as value? And one thing I'm going to add here is that you see the perception of value is sometimes even stronger than value. So take it this way, right? We see a Rolls Royce, which is a car that moves people from point A to point B, right? And we see a Toyota which is sold way, way, way less that does the same thing. And functionality is the same. But why would a Rolls Royce be sold so for so much more than a Toyota or any other car, you know. And that is what value is about. Understanding what your customers perceive as value is the starting point of driving blue ocean strategy. No assumptions, but actually understand what is value. Now, I'm going to, based on that, I'm going to take a an example just to buttress the point, right? So, I mean, every one of us knows Netflix, right? Started in 1997 by Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph. Now, if you look in the video streaming market, right, Netflix commands like well over 50% of that market. They are actually the leaders in that space, even ahead of Amazon Prime, Prime Video, Hulu, Disney, TV Plus, HBO, Paramount, and others. You know, like looking at the revenue from 2001 till like you can see that climb, from million to billion in the space of like 20 years, dominating, dominating, dominating that space. Now, what we have to understand here is that Netflix didn't actually start there, right? Now, this is what I'm showing here is the original Netflix website. Now, look at it, it looks so crappy. So, what was Netflix actually doing? All Netflix was doing was, oh, come and rent movies online. That was basically what they were doing, right? And the thing there was no late fees because Blockbuster, which was the market leader at that time, was basically doing the same thing and they dominated that marketplace. So, to give a little background, Blockbuster was um, also offering movie rentals and they had, you know, so many stores across the United States and around the world. So, Netflix idea is you can rent a movie, just go online and rent a movie, and you can have it, and we'll have it sent to you, and there are no late fees. So Netflix actually came up with a very innovative business model that was alien to Blockbuster, which was the market leader then. Now, as of 2005, right, just before Netflix began to make the pivot into online streaming, Blockbuster was king, right? Like with over 5,734 stores in the United States alone, it was king when it comes to, renting movies and watching movies and stuff like that. Like, so the big question is, where is Blockbuster today, right? If if Blockbuster had so much um, domination in the marketplace, how come they disappeared overnight? How was Netflix able to pull this off in the face of this giant Blockbuster? With so many stores across the United States and around the world, raking in billions of dollars. And to tell you how interesting this was, is that Netflix Blockbuster was profitable in every way. As a matter of fact, Netflix actually approached Blockbuster to buy them out. That this was in like the early 2000s, for $50 million. And the CEO then of Blockbuster actually laughed at the deal. Like, why would I buy you when I am king? You know? Now, but that story changed, right? Now, this is just an image of the revenue that Blockbuster was. You can see 1999, Blockbuster is raking in about over $4 billion. Netflix is not even anywhere close. Keep in mind that Netflix started in 1997 thereabout, and 2000 Blockbuster is still at 4.9 billion. We just see Netflix scratching the surface with just a 36 million right when they're coming on the scene. 2001, you see Netflix climbing there, and you know, Blockbuster is still on 5 billion, 5.9 billion. And but we begin to see the decline in 2008, right? And what we need to keep in mind, Net Blockbuster went out of business in 2010, 2011, thereabout. And from then on, Netflix was just, taking off. Now, this gives a better picture to it. Now, as you can see, Blockbuster had a valuation of about 8.4 billion in 1994. Netflix wasn't even there, right? As at 2000, when Netflix begins to make the pivot, changing our business model, Netflix was just valued at $50 million, you know. And right in 2010, Blockbuster is is still valued at $24 million. Is literally almost out of the game, and Netflix continues to rise. Why? Now, the interesting thing we need to understand here is that what Netflix did was just switching to movie streaming. Now, speaking about what the customer perceived that value, right? Now, this was at the time when the internet was coming on the scene, right? As a business owner, you need to understand what trends do you need to leverage, right? The same trend that Amazon leveraged, because when there were other bookstores, Barnes and Noble was there, and Amazon basically just went online, an online bookstore, all leveraging the rise of the internet. The same thing with Netflix did as well. But Blockbuster, which was the king at that time, was so big that they didn't see the need to make that move to video streaming, and that created a whole new market for Netflix. Started capturing the early adopters of the internet, people that were using the internet to stream. And keep in mind, at that point in time, the internet wasn't as what we see today. It was really slow and really crappy. So you can understand why Blockbuster will not even consider making that move. But Netflix began making that shift even when the market you know, was still like growing. So Blockbuster didn't find that attractive because to support their revenue growth, they needed something that an existing market that they're serving. Meanwhile, Netflix started looking for creating a new market for with a very innovative business model that helped them to drive growth and also led to the demise of Blockbuster, and that led to market leadership. So back to the point I'm making, it's not about starting a business or running a startup in a space that is crowded. You need to strategically look at what trends do you need to leverage, what market do you need to create, and as well as demand. So Netflix literally created demand for video streaming content. You know, same movies, just a different way of delivery. That's just it. Just the only thing they changed was in delivery. And Blockbuster was still pushing, you know, walk into a store and trade that. Now it looks ridiculous right now that Blockbuster was doing that, but if you think of it, what what will Blockbuster consider, taking a route that is there is no demand just yet. It's not lucrative enough. If you read the Innovative Dilemma from Clayton Christensen, he also mentioned that the giants or the big dogs then don't make the move as quickly as possible because the market demand is not there to support the kind of revenue numbers they're looking at. And so innovation happens right under their nose and they don't even see it, right? A typical example of the David and Goliath story, where the underdog goes against someone that is established and it brings him down. And this is the story of every successful or current successful company to date. Now, take a look at this slide, right? What do all these companies have in common? They all have number one, the David and Goliath story. Number two, they're all blue ocean. So I'll start with Tesla. Tesla is an electric car, right? Literally, Tesla went against the big dogs then, the BMW, Ford, and the rest of those other companies, well established companies, right? All Tesla did, Tesla is still in the same industry, the car manufacturing industry, but Tesla just created a new demand by producing electric vehicles. At a point in time, I mean, we're looking at two things right now. Number one, Tesla is literally challenging the oil, the oil, big oil and gas industries because by creating demand for Tesla electric vehicles, people are going to boycott, you know, fueling their cars, right? And there are more established car brands, Toyota, BMW, Ford, Audi, Mercedes, and Tesla literally goes into that space and creates and launches their own blue ocean strategy that makes them climb way out of there. Same thing with SpaceX. Before then, there's NASA that's been running the US program, other Russian companies as well. SpaceX goes into that space, into that industry, and create a new demand by virtue of their reusable rockets. So before then, countries spent will probably spend billions of dollars, just to get their satellites into space. And once it goes, they can't use the rocket again. And SpaceX comes in and turns that around and creates new demand because you can send your satellite or whatever it is into space and still use the rocket several other times. Same with Uber. Uber came into a space where there were, taxis all over the place, and Uber says, you know what, we're going to create a new demand within this same market. And everything they did just just turned that whole system. And it's strange to think of it that Uber doesn't even own a single car, right? This is Blue Ocean creating a new demand for your product. Same with Google. Before Google, there was also like the Yahoo and the rest of them. And Google comes in on the scene with their own search engine that just like indexes the whole internet, right? Just Blue Ocean creating a new demand for themselves that trust them into market as a market leader. Facebook, before Facebook, there was High Five, there was MySpace. And Facebook comes in on the scene and makes a whole new different shift into with connecting friends around the world, which the rest of them were doing it, but by virtue of starting with Harvard and the Ivy Leagues, Facebook just created a whole new demand for what they're doing that just make the rest before them obsolete. Microsoft went against IBM. Amazon went against Barnes and Noble. David and Goliath story. All of them. Apple with Steve Jobs went against every single industry that had, you know, that was controlling the market. With the iPhone going into the phone industry, with the iPod going into the music industry, just disrupting it. Same thing with Airbnb, the hotel industry, just creating a new demand that wasn't there and accelerating them to market leader. So, point I'm trying to tell you here is that many of these companies that we look at today all leverage blue ocean strategy to achieve what they're doing. And so it is very critical that we look at the strategy that we're executing in the marketplace and the idea we're bringing to the marketplace, and partly through the prism of how can I create an uncontested market that just gives me um almost stands out from everybody else, because you don't want to start something that is thrust into a very competitive market. The chances of growth are very slim. It's a dog eat dog market. And there are, I mean, so many other blue ocean strategies which I have shared earlier. And now I saw this and I just laughed. Over 50% of the people on the World Reach list are running companies that leverage blue ocean strategy. I mentioned previously of Elon Musk, right, with SpaceX and Tesla, two massive companies, both leveraging the blue ocean strategy. Jeff Bezos, Amazon as well, right? Just creating new demand for their product, right? Microsoft, the same thing. Facebook, Google, all like literally over 50% of these rich guys all started companies that were all built on blue ocean strategy. I mean, if these guys are doing it, why wouldn't you even consider it? I made mention of Tesla too as well. There's so many other car makers that have been in the marketplace way before Tesla, and Elon just creates a whole new demand for electric vehicles that helps him to dominate the US electric market space. Think of like the BMW that's been there for over half a decade, Kia, Ford, these different brands, and Tesla just shows up in the early 2000s, and boom, they're controlling the majority of the market. Why? Blue Ocean creating new demand that for their products and just standing out. I'm going to say this here, right? To actually rule and dominate, you need to establish some form of monopoly. I mean, clean monopoly, like Tesla or like Amazon, that just creates a whole new demand that um, is like a moat, right? That the competition can't even play in that space. Think of it from that blue ocean strategy. The same thing with SpaceX, blue ocean strategy. Among the other, so many other spacecrafts, but SpaceX comes with something unique, creates a new demand, and bam, they are leaders. So this brings us to talking about market leadership. Why is market leadership so important? So, market leadership is the position of a company with the largest market share or highest profitability margin in a given market for goods and services. And I mentioned to you all these different companies are attaining like market leadership in their space, all because of the blue ocean strategy. And Tesla, Uber, Google, SpaceX, Facebook, there's so many of them. But if you study them, you realize that they just create a new demand that help to, position them as as market leaders in their space. So we can summarize it this way: that blue ocean strategy is synonymous with market leadership. If you want to launch a great product that is going to stay relevant for a very long time, you might need to consider your blue ocean strategy. And now, where the rubber meets the road is actually how to execute a blue ocean strategy, how to think through it. Because I think everything starts with what you see and how you actually think about it. And I mentioned before, it's driving down cost is good, but value innovation is critical. Understanding what value is and playing in that space is very critical for you know driving market leadership in your industry. Now, this is like a graph just showing the buyer's value and the cost. So, ever, s- I mean, we all know um, different businesses that are, that are probably going into the very first strategy most businesses think of when they're going to a particular space is I'm going to crash my price. And in crashing the price, it also means are you going to compromise on quality or value? Because you can't win all the battles, right? Tesla is really not the cheapest car you see out there. They command premium prices, right? And they're making a killing. They're not competing on price. They're just creating a new demand that allows them to have, inelastic demand. That is powerful. Inelastic demand is basically you can shift your price high, and it will have little or no effect on demand. The same thing with Apple, right? Apple's products are actually way, way, way pricey than other alternatives in that space. And it really doesn't affect demand for the product, right? So you recall what I mentioned about demand and supply, right? Where we have elastic demand, where if your price goes up, there is a drop in demand. But with blue ocean strategy, think of how you're able to command, you know, premium prices and still not get a drop in demand. It's amazing. So we are pushing for in red ocean, you're pushing for differentiation or low cost, whereas in blue ocean, you get both. Amazing. Now, in actually doing it, in trying to execute the blue ocean strategy, there is one of the ways you advocate is to look at the three tiers of non-customers, which is people that are currently not buying from you. So, here's what it is. At the core of it is your current market, which everybody's trying to sell to. So the next group is tier one, which is the soon to be non customers who are on the edge of your market waiting to jump ship. And the tier two, is refusing non customers who consciously choose against your market. Then the last is tier three, which is unexplored non customers who are in the market distant from you. So a perfect way to look at this would be let's take for instance Apple, right? Apple started out in the computer space, right? And by the time Steve Jobs came back to Apple, they were it was really like in a bad shape. And to gain market leadership, Steve Jobs did some very interesting things, all blue ocean strategy. First thing, they tackled the music industry, right? Launched the iPod, iPod, diff- iPod devices, bonding them to Apple. Apple was in the computer space. I mean, why would they actually go into music in the music industry? Tier one, soon to be. And they keep on pushing, you know, from the music industry, they're going into the wearables. From the wearables, they're going into the phone market and all pushing tier one, tier two, reaching more people and creating a creating a very strong demand for their products. So when we look at all the products that Apple has rolled out, we'll see that they are all penetrating multiple industries that previously it has. I mean, you think of it, it has nothing to do with, you know, computer. I mean, if you are into the computing space, what do you have to do with a watch? What do you have to do with a phone? But the whole idea is to go for the non-customers and create a new demand there. With that, nobody else can beat you. And we're not surprised when we see like when Apple rolls out a new product and we see and so many people are outside the store waiting to just buy the product. So this is what you need to actually consider when we are talking about the non-customers, right? And I just wanted to bring this also to space, right? So in recent times, especially in Africa, there's been a lot of investment, especially in the fintech space. Now, one thing we have to understand is if you talk to so many of the fintech founders, this the one thing that it is often always pushed is we are trying to reach out to the unbanked. That is a blue ocean strategy, right? There is those that already have bank accounts, and you have those that don't have bank accounts. And many of the fintechs that have come in are trying to tackle that market because that market is actually big. And so a lot of investment has gone to fintech because they're trying to reach into the rollouts. It's more like a blue ocean strategy, so to speak. You know, fintech in particular. So reaching out to the unbanked is an amazing opportunity. So you want to look at where are the non-customers in the space, and then how do you now push for create awareness about your products and why you're different and create like a strong demand like Apple did that accelerates you to market leadership. Now, there's a four action framework you must do. So for many businesses, right, you are if you go into the marketplace, the four things you actually should look at in terms of like defining what your blue ocean strategy is going to be or should be. First is eliminate. Let's say which factor that the industry has long competed on that should be eliminated, right? So you look at Tesla. Like Tesla just comes in and if you're creating cars, the idea is that the cars must run on fuel, right? And Tesla comes and disrupts that. They still make cars, correct? But they're like, no, your car can also run on electricity, right? The next is reduce. What factors should be well reduced below the industry standards? So there's so many like in terms of like if you look at mobile phones, Apple comes in on the scene as well, and all they're trying to do is see how sleek they can make their phones that compared to BlackBerry at that point in time. Apple's phones were so sleek and very cute. So the you don't have to your phone doesn't have to be bulky. It can be, you know, sleek, cute, and easy to slide into your pocket. Next is raise. What factors should be raised well above industry standards? So you want to look at what is industry standard and what do we need to raise, you know, that would uh, make the make your product or your service stand out, you know, in the marketplace. Then it also is to create. So if what are the industry standards and what needs to be created in that space? So there's so many examples. You see, Zappos also coming with the shoes in the e-commerce space and just creating happiness, you know, from what Tony Shea brought. Just creating a whole new experience in the same e-commerce space that Amazon dominated, right? So you want to look at these things. You want to look at your product or your service or your startup from through this prism in terms of like creating blue ocean strategy. What do you need to eliminate that is in terms of the norm in your industry. What do you need to reduce as well? What do you need to raise, and what do you need to create? So these are the four action frameworks in terms of like executing a blue ocean strategy. And last but not the least is the six path framework. So first I spoke of the non-customer market. Then secondly, I spoke of the four action framework, and this is the sixth part. So part one, look across alternative industries, which is what Apple did. Apple looked into the music industry and came with something unique. Second is look across strategic groups within your industry. So that could mean, let's say, niching down into a specific group within, your industry that you want to serve, right? Then part three is look across the chain of buyers and redefine the industry buying group. So there are a number of things that you can look at in terms of like who are the buyers and how do we now, more like segment a buyers group and then redefine them and tailor it to your offering. Then look across complementary products and services, right? So if what are people buying before, during, and after doing business with you, and how can you pull that into the value you're creating? And also rethinking the functional, emotional orientation of the industry. So, like I give the example of Rolls Royce and a Toyota, right? All Rolls Royce does is creating an emotional connection between people that buy their cars and as against, let's say, other customers that are probably buying a Toyota or something. So the last is participate in shaping external trends over time. So business is basically about leveraging trends. But however, what if you can create the trends and define it? And that's one thing that Steve Jobs did. Same thing that Elon Musk is doing. And if you are able to shape the trend, that can give you an advantage in your space. So these are the things to consider if you're actually going to execute a blue ocean strategy and to give your startup the advantage it truly deserves. So you can join our community and look forward to seeing you on our next training session. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we will take your questions and possibly help you execute your blue ocean strategy in